Y'all just
Okay.
give me the word and I will jump in.
Well, our speaker tonight is Monte Nesbitt. He is a program specialist, I believe, in fruits and nuts. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's good enough. It's something
It's
like
good.
that. Yeah.
It's good enough. And now you're a doctor, right?
I'm a doctor. Actually an extension specialist and assistant professor as of a couple of months ago. So I've been
Oh wow.
reclassified a bit.
Oh wow. And you have a fruit conference coming up, right?
The Texas Fruit Conference in Fredericksburg, Texas, in 16 days. So 2 weeks from Wednesday.
And
Still open for registration. It's three
and is
days. Go ahead.
and it and is that open to anybody, Monte?
It's open to the public. Yes.
All right,
It's some
cool.
people are afraid it's a little commercial oriented. It's really not. The fruit, as we're about to talk about, we don't have big agricultural fruit industries other than the pecan industry and maybe the Rio Grande Valley citrus industry, which is basically owned by um, Wonderful or Paramount. It used to be Paramount. Now it's Wonderful Citrus. So beyond that, everything is small scale. And our conference, I think, appeals to a lot of different fruit interests, whether that's hobby. It might be aspects of this that are a little heavy for you, but we spend a lot of time on fruit per se. So I think we have a lot of master gardeners that come, and I think they would tell you it's worthwhile. There are two
All right.
components. There are two components of it this year that will be virtual. We have an intro to fruit growing workshop on Wednesday morning for 4 hours. And then the main conference on Thursday, which is 8 a.m. to 4:30 is virtual, will be offered virtually also.
Well, very good. And I've been to it before, and it's very good. So, may I make a quick little announcement, Monte, before
Sure,
we get
go
started?
ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that this week's lab is at the farmers market downtown on Wednesday night. Our labs are normally on Saturday mornings, but the farmers market is on Wednesday night. So we'll be meeting with Dr. Gilda Ramirez, who is the director of Grow Local, which is the group that manages the farmers market. So with that said, please welcome Dr. Monte Nesbitt, and I think you're in for a treat. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And good evening, everybody. I hope you're fired up for fruit. And I'm happy to spend the next couple hours on the things that I know about fruit. I've been working in fruit research and extension and academia for seems like a long time, maybe 30 something years. I've worked for um, Auburn University. I worked for the USDA, Pecan Genetics Group. I've worked for in my current job since 2009. So I have 15 years at Auburn, almost 14 here, which are my main two employment experiences. One of my it's easy to be an academic person, an extension person, a researcher, and talk about these things. But I have um, skin in this game as a fruit grower myself. Let me get my slides to advance here. There we go. Um, I have a 180 peach trees and some other fruit in Gonzales County, not terribly far from Corpus. And it's about 2.5 hours from College Station. My wife and I have been doing this for on the weekends for 8 years ish. And my real experience may be not having the backing of a university to bail me out. It's great to put in orchards when you're on a research or extension facility. I currently direct the Texas A&M Pecan Orchard, which is 65 acres of research and teaching orchard, and We have good equipment, and we have we're pretty financially solvent. I have a technician and students. When you go home and do it yourself, it's very different. And I often feel like I should add a F here on my slide. I have 6 Fs, reasons to grow fruit yourself. And the 7th one is failure. Um, Failure comes with growing fruit in Texas. Whether you have a PhD and you've been doing this for 30 years, or you're starting out for the first time, failure is a great teacher. So maybe that's the way we could justify having failure as a positive. I've had a lot of failure with peaches in Gonzales County, and I'll talk about that along the way. But the 6 real positives with fruit, and maybe fruit, and the F's, you can remember these things. Flavor, we certainly have this great experience of eating fresh and flavorful and intensely sweet and tree ripened. That's a real benefit and blessing of having fruit trees. Fragrance, not all of our fruit trees have wonderful odorous blooms, but many do. And that fragrance um, can be um, a wonderful thing. Let's stop my video. The other one is fitness. You're going to get out and have to burn some calories, do some bending, some reaching, some lopping of limbs, hauling bags of fertilizer or mulch or compost per se. Um, so you're going to stay fit if you're out working in an orchard. Um, Family. An orchard is a great family experience. And what appealed to me about horticulture when I began to see it as a field of practice and an opportunity for employment, I realized that I had some formative experiences as a child. Particularly, my parents had they bought some property that had an old home orchard on it, was fenced in to keep deer from eating it up. And it had some apricots and some peaches. And one year the apricots had this stars aligned, and there were lots of apricots to eat. And I just enjoyed that as a young kid. And so it's great, and it's great sharing opportunity for adults and children. And there's a lot of education that can be gained and given and delivered in a fruit orchard. Whether you like it or not, there's going to be a lot of things attracted besides people. Your neighbors may be attracted to your fruit, so maybe get ready for that. But there's going to be birds, possums, squirrels, raccoons, and lots of other things that come to a fruit orchard that you might have at your home. And then the last one here is finances. There is a real saleable commodity with fruit. It's highly demanded. This idea that we are Texas and we have the biggest and the best and locally grown is certainly an appeal to a lot of people. Many counties allow you to use an orchard as a agricultural valuation for property taxes. That's why I have 180 peach trees in Gonzales County. Sometimes they have to have a minimum spacing, minimum number of trees or berry bushes or whatever that is. That can be valuable, and the income that you can generate as a sideline or a real primary source of income. It's a real thing. When we talk about fruit, this can be things that we plant and organize and in straight rows and equal spacing, or we may more informally orient these in a landscape into front yard gardens or patios or container yards or raised beds or arbors. So a lot of interesting landscape features that incorporate fruit. Um, But then there may be simply wild plants in our landscape and in our property. And the picture on the right is my youngest son and during COVID. And we had dewberry crop that year, and he was picking dewberries in 2020 on our property. And he didn't particularly enjoy that, but the experience is there, and we didn't have to do much to have that fruit. And I made dewberry preserves. And so when we all had this extra wonderful COVID time, fruit, vegetable gardening certainly become a lot more pleasant and useful. Maybe our discussion of fruits should center around native. I say maybe. We'd have to give up a lot of things if we excluded anything that was non-native. We certainly have tremendous diversity of fruit plants in the state of Texas. Everything from maybe the most easy to grow plant that you could think of in Texas, the prickly pear and its fruit, to passion vine, wild grapes, pecan, which is of course our state tree, it's native, and the dewberries I mentioned, and many others. Now you don't have these everywhere. In certain areas, certain natives are more important than others, but certainly focus or understanding of native fruit plants in Texas orients us towards those things that can be successful. And our challenge with many fruits is repeatability, consistency, having these fruits year in, year out. It's very, very difficult for some reasons that we'll talk about. If we polled people today and asked them what they eat and like to eat fruit, Texans, they're probably going to point to some fruits from China, some things from the Middle East, some things from Europe, like strawberries you can find pretty much in a grocery store 365 days a year. Other areas of Europe. The North Americans, the blackberries, blueberries, pecans, and some of the American grapes. If we excluded everything else, we'd have to give up some really, really important fruits. The Texas climate affects what fruit will grow, thrive, and be productive in your area. The photograph here is from an Easter Sunday experience in Montgomery County by Mr. Michael Potter, who was once upon a time the Nueces County horticulture agent. Kevin followed Michael, and Michael took this photograph not long after he moved to Montgomery. And icicles on blooms this is not pretty. This is a horror picture, and you don't like ice on flowers or young fruit because it tends to mean loss of cropping. And this is one of the main things that we deal with is late spring frost or freeze. They don't have some of this in California, but we have it with regularity in Texas. That's one of our challenges. The other challenge is rainfall. Rainfall being very diverse in Texas, from a desert climate in the west to almost rainforest-like conditions as we come in from the Gulf Coast and up into, say, Beaumont, the Louisiana border. With high rainfall, we have lots of disease pressure, humidity, and thus we have brown rot on peaches, we have heart rot in pomegranates, and they don't have these things in California. And why am I picking on California? California is like the center of fruit growing universe in the United States. Pomegranates, which we have here, we have approximately, maybe less now, maybe we used to say 250 acres of pomegranates throughout the state of Texas. And California had I believe once upon a time about 7,500 acres of pomegranates. In Texas, we have less than 4,000 acres of peaches, peaches being one of our calling cards as a fruit crop in Texas. And California has 10,000 acres of peaches in California. So California seems to be more successful. They don't have the disease pressure that we do. They have a Mediterranean climate. They don't have some of the freezing winter weather that we have. But you need rainfall and you don't need rainfall. Rainfall makes irrigation easier, takes the pressure off of having to water, but it also introduces problems from plant diseases. Just a table that explains water requirements in fruit, and on the far right is the weekly water use in gallons for 1 acre. So if I filled up an acre of land, if I took my property in Nueces County, one of the surrounding counties, and I planted blueberries at a 10 by 12 spacing, and every blueberry on that is using 10 gallons once they're mature and have fruit on them, I would have 363 plants on that acre. There'd be rows and space to get up and down the rows, but I'd pretty much cover the acre, and I would need 25,410 gallons of water every week during the high water use times of the year. You look up and down this table, we need 25 to 30,000 gallons of water a week for an acre of fruit plants. That's about an inch of water. An acre inch of water is 27,152 gallons. So when you hear the saying, well, we got a good 1 inch soak in rain, well, you got a lot of water, and it's an effective amount of water because it's what we estimate generally to be what keeps these plants productive, thriving, and well. So do you have that? It's going to run your city water bill up. You're going to need a well water, a well to source that, provide that. Does that well have the quality of water, freedom from salts, and other issues that's going to make that suitable? Can you catch 27,000 gallons of rainwater a week and provide that nice quality water? You have to provide some thought about that. So water is an issue. Late spring frost is an issue. The other one is winter minimum temperatures, not just the springtime. How cold does it get in the midwinter? And the plant hardiness map will have those of you in Nueces County, you're coastal, you're right there, and you can maybe call yourself zone 9B, which puts you at about 25 to 30 as an average low winter temperature. That's pretty good. You move just north out of maybe Nueces County proper, maybe some of the northern areas of Nueces County might jump up into 9A and see low temperatures of 20 degrees on average. Some of the things we like to grow in Texas, citrus, pomegranates, olives, figs, have temperatures have damaging temperatures in that 20-degree type range. Some of them going a little lower. Olives taking 15 to 17 degrees as an example. We have to be aware of that some of our subtropical fruits flirt with these extreme low temperatures that we get. And all of you on this call probably remember February 15th, 2021, and it got well below your minimum. And we have this problem in Texas where our averages are made up of extremes. What's happened this summer is temperatures running 11 degrees above average throughout the summer, and that creates problems for plants. The fourth one I want to introduce, of a challenge that we have in Texas, is chilling. So I've just told you too cold is bad, late spring frost is bad. Now I'm going to tell you need some cold. And many of the temperate climate fruits, those that are not tropical or subtropical, they go dormant during the winter. That's how they get through the winter and not be damaged. And how they come out and bloom in the spring is affected by experiencing chilling temperatures. What is a chilling temperature? It's an hour of temperature with air temperature below 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Start a counter, a bean counter of sorts in mid-November, and run that counter through mid-February. And we are trying to get 200, 400, 600, 800 chill hours for winter. to make some of these plants come out of the winter dormant period and bloom and set adequate crops of fruit. Um, when that chilling is low for the year and you have a higher chilling variety of fruit or a species, then you may not get good leaf and fruit production that year. Year after year after year of this, these plants can become really stressed, and um, uh, marginal specimens for your landscape, your orchard, if they get a lot of chilling and then it gets warm like it can do in January, February in the Gulf Coast, then they may bloom too early and then get not even a late spring frost, a late winter frost, something like February the 15th or 20th, and it hits your apple blooms or your pear blooms or your peach blooms if they bloom too early because they're low chilling and you've gotten a lot of chilling that winter. So we have chilling maps, and it's going to show that the Nueces County area, are going to get about 400 chill hours on average. You should be targeting plants with a 250 to 550 chill hour requirement. Why below and why above? Well, our averages are made from a lot of extremes, and we're going to have years where we have very low chill. First year I had peaches in Gonzales County, and I'm north of you in a 500-hour zone. I'm about 3 counties to your northwest. And the first winter of 2016, 17, we had 200 chill hours that year. I didn't have a peach crop. My peaches look like the lower picture on the right with very few leaves on them from not receiving adequate chilling. In other years, I've had good chilling, and some of the plants that are low chill varieties have budded too early. It looked like Michael Potter's picture with icicles on them. So you plant 150 hours above and below to kind of deal with the variability. Some years you're low, some years you're a little higher. Certainly choosing those that are 400 chill hours is a good choice also. You're right at your average, but that's going to help you perform well in most years. Temperature works against us on the other end. We have extreme summer temperatures, high temperatures. This map, interestingly enough, I made this presentation predates 2023, and I made this map from what many of us will remember the brutality of 2011, and these black areas of the map, and you see north central Texas, not much on the Gulf Coast, but north and central Texas had more than 70 days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I think we eclipsed that in 2023 with similar and maybe broader areas of the state receiving these extremely high temperatures. We have plants like raspberries that don't do well, like filberts or hazelnuts that don't do well. Pomegranates show a lot of sunburn in Texas. Some of those citrus struggle with that type of temperature and direct sunlight. So I have a cheat sheet, and people call me or write to me and say, why can't I grow mangoes in Nueces County? Well, you're not tropical, and a mango is a tropical fruit. You don't have the growing season number of frost-free days to do that. Bananas, same thing. Or maybe it's sweet cherries, and so sweet cherries, they require a lot of chilling. They get rain after fruit is set and mature, which is late spring to early summer, and the fruit splits badly. But guess what? We get a lot of rain in Texas during that time. Maybe too hot for some of these, or maybe certain disease problems like with walnuts, brown rot, bacterial leaf spot and brown rot on almonds. Almonds are low chill, very warm temperature responsive. They freeze out year in, year out. And so we can't grow everything well in Texas. We're a unique climate. Get used to it, because it's going to be different if you're living here and lived elsewhere in your life. It's just very different. So what I want to do is spend some time going through the important Texas fruit crops, those that you may want to have for pleasure, those that are we look at as being potential farming, fruit farming crops in Texas. And I'm going to present these in an important order, I think. I'm going to present them in order of greatest acreage in Texas. We have a U.S. Department of Agriculture that keeps a census of farm reports. People report what they grow, or they're supposed to. They don't all do that. And that tells us about how many acres of some of these things are in Texas. I believe, although there's inaccuracies with survey data and census data in the U.S. government, I do think it's a reasonable reflection on what we grow well in Texas. We grow a lot of. What we grow poorly in Texas, we don't grow much of. Understand this. People want to grow things to make a profit. There's business interest. And if it can be profitable, people will try to do it. And people have tried to do it all. And some of it works well, some of it not. And so I think by you seeing what does not work well in Texas, it may point to areas where you are going to have challenges yourself in the future. Guess what? Our number one fruit crop, yes, it is a fruit tree. The fruit is a drupe. It's not a true nut. It's our number one nut. It's classified as a tree nut in a lot of different areas. Technically, it's an angiosperm, and the fruit morphology makes it a fruit tree. It is a drupe, much like a peach. Just the outer carpal tissue, not something you want to eat. We want to eat the seed contents. But pecan is our most planted fruit tree in the state of Texas. 82,000 acres. That is farm reported. There's 1 million acres of native pecan trees in Texas. You may have some of them. It's adapted here. It has a unique chilling requirement, heat requirement, interrelationship that means that it does not bloom too early and have Kevin Gibbs or Michael Potter or somebody take a picture of icicles on pecan flowers. It does happen much more infrequently than with many of our fruits. Pecan trees are late to bud out, they're late to flower, and they escape. They've lived here long enough to know it's going to happen, this late spring frost thing. It's a fast growing, durable tree. You want to have a hardwood tree, makes nice shade, that doesn't have the oak wilt issues. Plant a pecan tree, you'll get to size bigger and faster than an oak tree. Yeah, they make a lot of trash. People detest them, from the catkins, the leaf drop, the aphid honeydew, the nuts, the shucks, the squirrels chewing the nuts up in the tree, the walnut caterpillars eating the leaves off the tree. They've got issues, but it's a durable, long-lived, fast-growing tree. Other pros about pecan trees, the fruit lasts a long time, 5 months at room temperature, where most fruit, use it, harvest it, use it, give it away, or sell it immediately, or you're going to lose it. So if you're a slow moving marketer of fruit, pecan might be for you. Anyone can sell pecans. There are buyers throughout the state of Texas. They will take 50 pounds of pecans from you. They will take 50,000 pounds of pecans from you. So anybody can get into the pecan trade. It takes a while for these trees to get to bear. They take a lot of water. They're large. They're going to eat up space. If space is limited, one of these can take up a quarter to half acre easily. They have pests. They're difficult to spray due to their size. So those are some of the negatives. What are some of the things that you need to know? They're wind pollinated. Do they require a pollinizer? Yes. You plant a type 1 like Caddo or Fayette. You plant a type 2 like Kansas or Lakota, and you have adequate pollination. Space them 50 feet apart. They have a little bit of a chilling requirement, but they can overcome that with warm temperatures. They need deep, well-drained soils. They've got all these pests. Scab is a problem. You want scab-resistant varieties in Nueces County. And what else do I need to tell you? We run into zinc deficiency problems. If your soil pH is 8 and above, they'll have some zinc deficiency problems, and we spray zinc on pecan trees to deal with that. So that's kind of a 2-slide quickie on pecan trees. Now we're going to drop significantly here and go from pecans to citrus. We're going to go from 82,000 acres to 26,000 acres of citrus. And all of that now, maybe 1% is north of the lower Rio Grande Valley. We lost a lot of citrus to the freeze in 2021. I lost citrus in 2021 in Gonzales County. I protected them. They came back. I lost them last December, or had them freeze back on me again. So we have not been in a good pattern for citrus in the Gulf Coast area. Still a large holding of grapefruit, navel oranges, some lemons, some mandarins in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Citrus are wonderful plants for a horticulturist, for a master gardener. The horticulture is simple: lots of water, lots of fertilizer. Go heavy with nitrogen, water frequently, have good well-drained soils, have the right rootstock for the soil pH that you have, and you're going to grow citrus abundantly, beautifully, and amaze your friends. In 2 years' time, you can be producing 40, 50 pounds of citrus per tree. They grow fast, they're prolific, and the fruit stores on the tree well, just gets sweeter over time. Grapefruits are great in the lower Rio Grande Valley because they don't freeze before January. They have a lot of time to hang on the tree, and they just get sweeter, ripening on the tree. The negatives about citrus today is we have this problem called citrus greening disease, and it causes the trees to actually die. That sounds bad, and it is bad. And Florida's lost, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of acres of citrus. And there's a real likelihood that another 10 years we won't have Florida orange juice. We won't have Florida citrus because of citrus greening. We have greening in Texas in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Houston area has some greening. We have plant quarantines that supposed to prevent you from moving it from area to area. Make sure you're buying labeled, certified citrus plant material. Don't bring it from the valley. Don't bring it from Houston. Buy it in your county or a neighboring county that's not in a quarantine with greening. That keeps you from spreading it unknowingly. There's nuisance pests. There's whiteflies. There's scale, mealy bugs, and those aren't terribly difficult. What else do you need to know that I haven't touched on? No chilling hours. That's not an issue. No pollinizer required, only in a couple of types that you probably will not grow, like a tangelo. Most of them self-pollinate. A few require cross-pollination, but not many. One of the keys to know is there is the right root system for certain fruit trees, what we call a rootstock. We graft a variety onto a root system when the plant is young, either by budding or grafting. That gives us adaptation to soil type. That gives us growth controlling properties in some cases. And with citrus, the key for you is to know your soil pH. And if you have an alkaline soil greater than 7.5, then you need to be on a rootstock like sour orange. If you're in a more acid soil type, you could have trifoliate orange and you'd be doing great. But often you'll find the nursery you're buying from, if it's retail, does not know the rootstock. It's very important to find that information out if at all possible. We do have citrus nurseries in Texas that can tell you that. You just got to knock on those appropriate doors. The challenges, you're going to lose citrus. You get into the mid 20s. You got limes and lemons and maybe citrons, maybe 28 degrees. A lot of commercial citrus that we like to eat and grow and have as hobby citrus are mid lower 20s. And below that, you're going to have damage. So you got to have a plan to protect those these 1, 2, 3 nights of winter when it gets a little cold for them. Some other things I think we've covered on those. One thing I'll mention, horticultural oil will help you with mites, with leaf miners, scale, whiteflies, what I call nuisance pests on citrus. All right, we're reducing acreage again. We've gone 82,000 acres, 26,000 acres. Now we've taken a steep drop to about 5,000 acres. Now, this was the census back in 2017, I believe. We're due to see the 2022 census about any time. The grape specialists I work with tell me that that value is low for grapes. They've had tremendous growth of grapes for winemaking in Texas, and they would say that it's 7,000 to 10,000 acres of grapes. When we talk about grapes, we're talking about vinifera, things that can use for wine. We're talking about hybrids, things that can be used for grape, jelly, jams. We could be talking about muscadine grapes. There's a different species of grapes. There's several different plants, and we're talking about a trailing small fruit that most have fruit that ripens in bunches, and they can live a long time. We have some serious disease problems, the main one being Pierce's disease, which is transmitted by insects, affects the vascular system, clogs up the plumbing, if you will, of the plant's xylem system, and shuts down water movement, and the plant dies from lack of water uptake. There are lesser problems, things like black rot in high rainfall areas like the Gulf Coast. And what else can I tell you on grapes? You really don't need pollinizer. You could plant out one grape and produce fruit. Do need to realize that some of the American grapes and our natives, like the Mustang grape, you have male and female plants. And if you have a male, you'll never see fruit. And we hear people talk about that and call into extension offices and say, I've got these grapes rambling, never seen a fruit on them. What's the problem? You have all males. And for whatever reason, the males took over in that area, and you need some females for fruit production. Well, there's rootstocks that help certain soil situations on grapes. Challenges for home production. Spring frost in some years is an issue. Pierce's disease, black rot, a problem. Cotton root rot is, we'll talk about a couple of times. It's a soil inhabiting fungus that can cause death of vines or death of trees. And you're certainly in the area of Texas where cotton root rot can be present in an alkaline clay type soil with a pH of 8.2, Houston black clay, some of these gumbo type clays can certainly harbor this soil inhabiting disease and be a problem on grapes, apples, and some other fruits as well. All right, my next move downward is in acreage is the peach tree. And we'll throw in nectarines here. Nectarines are peaches. And peach, nectarine, apricot acreage, plum acreage, all of that together puts us at about 4,000 acres. It says 33 here. We think it's maybe a little higher than that, but it certainly declined from the lofty heights it was in the 1980s, 1990s. We had 15,000 acres of peaches in the late 80s to early 1990s. So we've had a major loss of peach acreage in the state. Why is that? Late spring frost, insufficient chilling, um, pest problems is a third distant reason, but mostly inconsistent fruit production. And I personally have been inconsistent in Gonzales County due to late spring frost, due to insufficient chilling. Over about 7 crop years where I could have made a full crop, um, I've made total about 3 crops. That's less than once every other year, which are not good odds. And that's a problem. That's a challenge. People give up, they lose heart, they lose their retirement, they lose their ag exemption, and there are a lot of negatives if you can't produce fruit consistently. The demand for locally grown peaches is tremendous. I can sell all the fruit I can pick. My challenge is being able to have fruit to pick. Um, Lots of pests. There is a competition every year that fruits. It's one of the environmental groups that's kind of policing pesticide uses, and they'll rank fruits as the dirtiest as far as the amount of pesticides used to produce them because of pest issues. Um, and peaches tend to be up there. Strawberries, peaches, apples tend to be the top candidates to win that award every year. Um, they grow rapidly. You're going to need to prune them frequently. The fruit perishes quickly. You can't hang on to peaches for very long once they're ripe. They tree ripe, they really go bad quickly. That's why you see lots of green, firm, not tree ripened peaches in the grocery stores. They perish, they decay rapidly after they become fully ripened. And that's a commercial challenge. What else do you need to know? They're wind pollinated. They're they don't really have to have bees even. They don't require a cross pollination with another variety. Plant them 15 feet apart, 20 feet apart, 25 feet apart. That's all good. Know your soil pH again and plant the right rootstock so you don't have problems with iron chlorosis and other issues like that. Peach tree borers, brown rot, plum curculios, stink bugs, having too many fruit that you have to thin are all real challenges for peach growing. I, as a peach grower myself, can handle the first 4 of these on the table on the right. I can handle borers spraying once or twice a year. I can deal with brown rot by spraying or harvesting fruit quickly. I can spray insecticide in the spring and deal with plum curculio. If I spray early enough in the spring, I'll knock my stink bugs back. My big challenge with 180 peach trees is getting all the trees thinned. And when you don't thin properly, you end up with golf ball or $half diameter fruit, tiny fruit, and people want or they're attracted to 2-inch, 3-inch diameter peaches, and you've got to hand thin the fruit to make that happen. All right, moving on, and I'll pause here in a little bit, give you all a break. But we want to move through this acreage information because I think it's telling you a story of success in Texas. Next on our list is olive tree. This is the European olive that's pressed for oil or is brined and pickled and used in salads, in salad bars, and in what we call table olives. This is the European olive. The fruit is a drupe, like a pecan or a peach. It's a easy to grow fruit. It's drought salt tolerant, produces wonderful oil. If you want to make your own olive oil, you need about 1 tree's worth of olives. To do that, about 70 pounds of olives will get you about a gallon of olive oil to eat and cook with. And so it's a wonderful plant, low maintenance, easy to care for, drought tolerant. Problem is, and the cons here on the right side of the slide, cotton root rot, big problem. Phytophthora root rot, big problem. Erratic fruit production. What I mean by this, low amounts of fruit production in a lot of years. Occasionally we get a sporadic, nice crop of fruit, back to low amounts of fruit, up, down, inconsistent. Trees vary. No rhyme or reason. We can't figure it out. Just not very productive in Texas climate. They're not adapted to a continental climate that we have. They are a Mediterranean crop, um, for California, for Spain, for Greece, and we just don't have that climate here. They suffer in the cold. We lost a lot of trees in 2021. I would say most of the Texas olive industry froze to the ground. Probably 50% of that has since been abandoned. And we're in big, big trouble with olives, and that acreage is declining. What have I not told you already that's on this slide? Some need to know information. I think we covered that. There's a bit of a chilling requirement. We think it's about 300 hours with olive trees. The amount you need to press a gallon of oil is about 70 pounds of olives. And I think there's about 70 olives for a pound. So you're looking at picking about 5,000 olives off a tree to press 1 gallon of oil. And then you would need a press or some stones to crush them with. So it tends to not be a very user-friendly tree as far as using the fruit yourself. Wonderful tree to look at. I know Kevin's mentioned there's olives in Nueces County. Maybe the botanical garden there had some planting, and they're wonderful texture, foliage, drought tolerant, just not a great fruit tree. So let's move on. Let's move on to blueberries. Look at the acreage. We're only at about 1,000 acres. Why is the acreage of blueberries so low? Couple of things. It's a very restricted crop in Texas to acid soil. Now, these can be grown in containers very well if you just practice good horticulture and handle potting soil and salts and water and calcium in water and those kind of things well. You can produce blueberries in large pots and actually produce fruit on a commercial scale by doing that. Historically, it's been an East Texas piney woods fruit plant and locally grown, sold local, organic, not a lot of pests. Spring frost is a big issue. It sets them back as far as being productive. Birds, varmints, or negatives. What else do I need to tell you? Yeah, an East Texas crop, 10 feet spacing. There's a couple of different types of blueberries that we grow. The rabbit eye blueberry is the taller, more adapted to central northern latitudes in Texas. There is a southern high bush blueberry that's more low chill, that's a shorter statured plant. It'd be very good in the Nueces County winter climate where you have fairly warm winters, and these things can bloom in February and have ripe fruit in April. I'm talking about southern high bush blueberry, and yet um, um, frost could catch you on some years. They have a couple of pests, fruit flies, blueberry maggot is one. Then the I can't think of the name of the spotted wing Drosophila fly is an invasive pest that attacks blueberries. Um, Brown marmorated stink bug is a blueberry pest as well. So they do come with some particular challenges. Got asked to talk about bee pollination recently. Blueberries do need pollination. We've been talking about most fruits that don't need a lot of cross pollination. Blueberries do, and they utilize the southeastern blueberry bee to help them with pollination. They need buzz pollination, an insect that will vibrate that little bell-shaped flower and get that pollen on the pollinator being the insect, and then moving that to another variety. So here's more of that. So when you have cross-pollination, I'm going to use blueberry as a great example of how to go about finding pollinators. So if you know a fruit crop needs cross-pollination, That means you need more than one plant, and they have to be different varieties. Two Austin, or we'll just use Austin as a variety of blueberry. Two Austin blueberry plants is not equal cross pollination. You got to have Austin and Premier, or Austin and Climax, or Austin and Brightwell. And so you need tables that will tell you chilling requirement. Why is chilling requirement important with pollination? It's going to tell you typically when they're going to bloom in your climate. You want similarity of bloom date on two plants that you intend to be reciprocal pollinators. So tables like this can be found for a lot of these fruits that require cross pollination. Apples and pears being two that need help like this in pollination. And just some blueberry variety information. And I'm not going to slow down much today on for the sake of time. You get variety information from your county office there, I'm sure, as well as some of our fruit fact sheets. I got to move along, so I'm going to move on to blackberries. I talked about natives earlier, and both blueberries and blackberries are North American, and some of those can be found in some of the um, areas of Texas as far as the native range. And blackberries that we eat and see as large fruited, eye popping, wonderful fruit started as native dewberries, and they were bred and bred and bred and hybridized to produce bigger fruit, to produce fruit without thorns, to produce fruit that bear on first year canes, et cetera, et cetera. So we see blackberries doing very well as a small fruit. Small fruit is kind of terminology for berry crops. Berries are small fruits. And blackberries, I think, have adaptation throughout much of Texas. Blueberries being more of an East Texas fruit. Blackberries, you don't have that restriction on. You know, in high pH soils, they will show some iron chlorosis problems, and yet they're chilling, and their heat response to flowering, the flower response to heat days means they tend to do a little better on the late spring frost issue. Again, I think it has a little bit to do with the fact that they are from North America. What other things do you need to know? You don't need cross-pollination. Insects and wind are involved in their pollination, but they don't have to have cross-pollination. Chilling hours, there are chilling hour to be concerned with. There are some serious diseases that attack the canes: double blossom rosette, orange rust, anthracnose, orange felt disease, cane boring insects, stink bugs. So with blackberries, they come with some problems. Be prepared to deal with those, protect those. Spray. We'll talk about spraying later in this presentation. So next up would be pears. We're down now to a meager 450 acres in the state of Texas. What are the pros with pears? They have few seasonal pests, very durable tree, tall, tend to be a little narrow branched or compact canopy. We always want to get pears to be broader shaped, not just upright and vertical. And young trees especially tend to have that growth habit. The fruit perishes slowly, has good keeping quality. The trees live a long time unless you have a fire blight susceptible variety. Fire blight's a bacterial disease. It turns the blossoms black, the leaves black, the twigs black, the branches black, and the trunk black if it's a susceptible variety. And you have a year like 2023 when it's very hot and there's early spring rains that set up the systemic infection of fire blight, and then it just grows through plant tissues, colonizes plant tissue, collapses plant tissues, and these trees just die. And so we have to have fire blight resistant varieties. What are those? Um, things like Kiefer, Orient, Shinli, one of the Asian types. Those are some examples. Fact sheets, local county information, Tennessee, Warren pear, Garber, uh, Ayers, although I saw fire blight on Ayers variety pears this year. Fire blight's a real problem. It's the challenge that's always been here in Texas. It's what limits us and holds us back with pears. Embracing pears and really holding pears for a long time is fire blight disease. Otherwise, they do require cross pollination, as alluded to earlier. So you need a couple of varieties that are suitable bloomers, compatible bloomers, or blooming at the same time so that they can pollinate one another. There are some rootstock issues. Pyrus caloriana, the calorie pear. Bradford pear is a calorie type. Tend to be what most of us growing. If you have alkaline soil, Pyrus betuifolia is a better rootstock plant for you to be growing pears on. Okay. Less popular, less acreage. Certainly a popular fruit to eat is apples, but they fall behind pears in farm acreage. Big problem, and I have it here as the top con on the right side of this table, is high susceptibility to cotton root rot. They just vanish or melt, wilt in the sight of cotton root rot. It just is very virulent on apple trees. Other problems, chilling. There are a lot of apple varieties in the world, Cosmic Crisp, and things like that we'd love to try out. And a lot of those require more chilling than we do, at least in the central southern part of the state. The High Plains right now is kind of our area to grow apples, and we have some potential to grow that in Texas. Up there, we don't have cotton root rot on the High Plains, up Lubbock and Amarillo area. And other problems, there is fire blight on apples, oriental fruit moth, apple scab. Mentioned earlier about the competition for apples and competition for who's the most pesticide sprayed fruit in the world, and apples sometimes win that award. Apples can be grown on dwarfing rootstocks. There are a lot of varieties. Most of those varieties are really adapted to the north. For those of you on the Gulf Coast, you're going to need low chill apples. Anna, Einsheimer, Dorset Gold or Golden Dorset. Those are 300-hour chill hour apples, and they'll do real well if you get past the other problems. Do need cross pollination, so you're going to need Anna and Dorset's Gold, two varieties to have together to get good cross pollination and fruit set. What else do I need to tell you? I think we covered that one. So we'll now drop down to pomegranates. 256 acres reported in 2017. I think it's more like 56 acres today. Reason being, they didn't survive the freezes of 2021 well, and we had such challenges with consistent fruit production and fruit diseases that they weren't planted back in a lot of areas of Texas. So I think this one, it's kind of gone back in time to where we were as an occasional landscape plant, not much of a commercial crop in Texas. I will say this, they're very drought tolerant. They're very low maintenance. This picture shows a fruit produced that I produce at my place in Gonzales. On the right side is one of my pomegranates in Gonzales, 2023 photograph. Took this photograph about 3 weeks ago. No water, no water at all. And it is the healthiest looking plant in that area, other than the live oak, that's not been getting that's been had no water. They're rugged, tough, drought tolerant plants. Grasshoppers don't eat these. I have a lot of grasshoppers in Gonzales. I don't know why they don't eat the pomegranates. Maybe that's just a unique thing at my property. Deer have started browsing on these of late. I was bragging earlier to one of my coworkers that the deer don't browse on them. They couldn't believe that. In fact, deer have been browsing them lately because they haven't had much else to browse on. But I like pomegranates as a very rugged, low maintenance plant. They have a problem. They have these beautiful open flowers. There is a fungal disease that invades that and causes rotting in the core of the fruit. We call it heart rot, and we have a difficult time controlling that in humid areas of Texas in particular. What else do you need to know? They will freeze. We talked about that. They're widely adapted. We think they're cotton root rot resistant. So if you're needing something and have had problems with cotton root rot, this may be another reason to plant those. Getting near the end, I think I've got 2 or 3 more fruit crops left, and then I'm going to give you a short break. Persimmons, 191 acres, slow growing, fall harvest fruit. These are Asian persimmons, large fruited, tomato size fruit. We have native persimmons. These are Diosporus kaki, which is from Asia. The fruit can be eaten firm, non-astringent, slow growing, slow to get producing. But once they're had a few years to get developed, they're a very easy fruit. People ask us for what can they grow. Doesn't take a lot of support or a lot of care and inputs. Protection, and persimmon would be one of those. Strawberries, an annual fruit. Everything we've talked about can live on your property perennially. Strawberries, we think are best, although you can grow strawberries as a perennial. We think they're best done as an annual. Their best time to plant them is this week. This is when you need to plant strawberries, not in the springtime. And I've been on a crusade to try to get master gardeners to buy into this and become the strawberry champions of the state. And Brazoria County has had a big strawberry jamboree this year. I don't know if that's already happened or is about to happen. They bought into this, and I was happy that our horde agent there decided to do this. Strawberries should be planted in the fall, protected during the winter, and then harvested in the springtime. You have to grow the right strawberries. You want spring-bearing strawberries, and those flower and set fruit on short days. So it takes about 45 days to start to get blooms, and then 30 days to get from blooming to ripe fruit. So you can have wonderful fruit late winter, early spring. Do not grow spring and summer strawberries with everbearing type strawberries. They don't work as well in Texas. So we say grow short day, spring blooming, or day neutral strawberries. Plant those in the fall, harvest in the springtime. No cross pollination. They're self-fertile. Chilling hours, nah, that's not an issue. Well-drained soils or plastic mulch is a good thing for strawberries. I think we covered the rest of that. Last and not least would be figs at only about 121 acres. And figs are very low maintenance. This is a shrub or a small tree. We rarely see them survive enough winters to get to be a large tree. And so winter freeze injury right off the bat is one of the things that we're concerned about with figs in Texas. Otherwise, if you can keep the birds off of them and maybe some of the varmints from eating the fruit, you have a wonderful crop, a very prolific crop if you give them a good access to moisture. They're very water consumptive. Mine in Gonzales have been struggling with a hot, dry summer that we've had. I've kept them alive, but that's about it. They haven't grown like they can. They need a lot of water. So plant them in an area that you can water them well, plant them in an area you can protect them from severe winter freezes, because they have been a problem the last 2 or 3 years. I had winter injury last December because they had not had enough winter and not gotten toughened up enough. And right before Christmas, they got hurt. And there's a lot of varieties to choose from. Figs, a lot of different varieties of figs, and they're wonderful fruit. They perish quickly, so you've got to pick them, eat them, or have people come pick them at your place, pick your own type marketing. So that's where we are. We have more details. This has just been an overview. We have more details on our fruit fact sheet, some of which we are revising. In fact, I was told today there's a new pear fact sheet out, new native pecan fact sheet out. We've got some others coming behind those. Those are at AgriLife Learn, and Kevin and his office can tell you how to get to AgriLife Learn and find some of the latest information. The things I just talked about, here's a little look at: when are they ripe? When did they bloom? How much fruit can one of these produce? Don't plant too many. If you've got 5 peaches in a heavy year, you could have 500 pounds of peaches to deal with. So 1s and 2s are typically ample for just you, the master gardener, and your immediate family. Certainly, if you're ambitious, you become a collector of one of these, a fig collector or fig rustler, they call them, or a citrus enthusiast. You're going to plant more and you're going to have a lot of fruit to deal with, and that's a good problem to have. So I'm going to talk about some cultural things. I think we got plenty of time to get through that. I'm going to pause because we've been on for an hour and 10 minutes to give you a short break. I need to take a short break myself, maybe 7 minutes or so, and then we'll get back on and we'll go through some of this cultural things to consider now that you know what you might be interested in, what you have to do a good job of growing those. So I'm going to mute my mic and give you all a few minutes. But seeing if anybody has any questions. I may have a question on the stuff we raced through so far. Any fruit questions? Anybody?
I didn't see anything come up in the chat.
Okay, well, that's good. We'll ask for some questions at the end as well. So let me provide some soil, water, fertilizer type information that most of us need to have some working knowledge of.
Before you go in, and we finally got a question there in the chat. She has a pomegranate, has the fungus you spoke of. She wonders how to remedy that. Or if it
Yeah, probably it's a fungicide that is sprayed while they're blooming. We don't have good control, timing, recommendations, but when you see the fruit beginning to swell after flowering, I would probably spray with something like myclobutanil, which is a common fungicide works for several fruit crops. That's the very best I can tell you on that. Stink bugs, I'll tell you another stink bugs spread cause rot also. So if the rot is occurring in lower side areas of the fruit, that may not be the bloom invading fungal form of this. And I find that a lot of people have stink bugs that they're not aware of. So stink bug control can help with fruit rot on pomegranates also. All right, anything else? I'm going to
there's
move
one
on.
question. A guy asked, what is the most grown fruit in our part of the country down in Nueces County? Do you know?
I do not know that there's any one thing that's the most grown. I think in Nueces County, it's probably very eclectic, a mix of things.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything and not a lot of any one thing, due to all the challenges that we just talked about. So I don't think there's one that we can point to.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so keep thinking of questions and you can enter those in the chat along the way. Let me talk to you about some things you need to consider. Now that you've got some interest, I've sparked your interest, hopefully. What are some things you need to know? Well, you need to know some things about your soil. And one of those is water drainage. This is Brazoria County after a hurricane came through. Tropical depressions sometimes drop a lot of water. I think Kevin said that y'all had 4 inches of rain. That's science fiction for us. And but you do have the potential to have coastal frequent rains. And if your soil is spongy or does not have what we call internal drainage, percolation of water downward rapidly enough, then fruit trees like this can struggle. We have a very simple test that we recommend doing, and it's a percolation test or internal water drainage test with post hole diggers and nothing but post hole diggers. Never use an auger for this because an auger will spin and glaze and make the clay pot even more glazed. You dig these with post hole diggers, 32 inches deep, 8 inches wide, fill it with 5 to 7 gallons of water. And how long does it take for the water to move through that hole? It'll move through the sides of the hole. It'll move through the base of the hole. We want it to drain in a short number of hours. 24 hours is good. We would be willing to plant an orchard on that and not have to do anything and believe that our drainage was adequate to produce fruit trees and berry bushes. 48 hours of water standing, you got a problem. And more than 48 hours is unacceptable. So anybody can do this. Do this as a first step to see what should I do. If you're in Brazoria County and you want to grow citrus and you think you might have a tropical depression someday and you have clay soil, it takes 48 hours to drain or more, you plant on a raised bed or what we call a berm or a hill. And you make that hill or berm out of the native soil. Do not use anything else to plant in. And this hill type geography and geometry will physics, gravity will move water away more quickly, and you have a fighting chance of being successful. After you've done that, you may want to take just your regular recommended soil nutrient tests. You may want to look for salinity, being you're in a coastal area. Have you had an intrusion of salts, either from being right on the coast proper or through the groundwater system? Has there been salt accumulation in your soil? If there has, there's going to be some problems with that. The irrigation water is as important as the soil quality. Many fruit are sensitive to total salt content. Presence of single ions like sodium, boron, and others that can be a problem. So you send your water for testing the same place you send your soil for testing. You can see in this table, we break down most everything falls into the salt sensitive orchard crop category. We have a couple of moderately sensitive, that being grapes and figs. And then if you've got real salt problems, jujube, olive, and pomegranate. Again, the pomegranate has some traits for durability and taking some tough situations, being salt. Okay. You've got soil, you got water, you need plants. And you should really think first of sourcing fruit trees or fruit plants from Texas sources. We do get into some quarantines with citrus plant material cannot come into Texas from anywhere else. It's all has to be propagated, developed, and produced in nurseries internally. We cannot bring it in from anywhere else. So if you're a traveler, and especially if you're a global traveler, please resist the temptation to travel home with plant material. It's not a good idea usually. We talked about rootstocks, and here again, I'll mention citrus, peaches, apples, and pears as fruit trees that do better on particular rootstocks. So as you're planning for this, you want to plan to talk to nurseries about how to get the right rootstock for the soil situation, because you will have had a soil test and know what your soil pH is. We just mentioned the need to do that in the previous slide or two. Are there variety issues? What do I mean by variety? Well, pear is a species, and within that, there's multiple varieties that have been developed and recommended. So they all are important. A variety affects its chilling requirement, its disease resistance, its heat tolerance, the flavor of the fruit, the size of the fruit, the date that it matures and ripens. So when we're selecting a variety of fruit to grow, it is a major shopping decision. Do I want it to have scab resistance as a pecan tree? If yes, then I need Kansas or I need Fayette, a couple of very scab resistant varieties. So we really need to enter in to these decisions of what to grow and then to find the right variety of that particular fruit type. There are still old bare root plant nurseries. They dig fruit trees in the winter and they ship them all over Texas. WOMACnursery.com, WOMACK nursery.com, all one word. They've been in the third generation. They dig and ship, UPS, all throughout the winter time. You have to plant these in the winter. Historically, they have a little more challenges with survival with bare root because the plants have been dug out of the ground, handled, packed, shipped. You handle them and wave them around in the air a time or two before you plant them in your space, and that tends to hurt survival. Container production, the plant root system is grown in a pot in soilless media and self-contained, portable, greater survival. They plant winter, spring, and fall, and they may cost you a little bit more. So all of that works, no problem with either. These are some pictures on planting. I'm going to focus just on a couple of things. Don't dig holes too deep. I've got in the very first photograph here on the left, the guy planted this field, dug his holes too deep, and I'm having him fill them back up because you don't want fruit trees to settle. You want a firm base. Don't overdig your holes. I'm always trying to figure out where this tree was grown in the nursery, identify the root, the shoot, the soil line, and plant at the same depth or more shallow. In the center picture, you see that very light yellowish, beige coloration, and then the gray brown bark of the stem. And you can see that line there is where the line where those two colors meet is where that was grown in the nursery. I think this plant needs to be raised up and planted more shallow because the roots are 4 or so inches below the soil surface. A lot of nurseries or pots have a lot of oxygen in the upper part of the soil. You want your roots to similarly have access to a lot of oxygen. So plant more shallow is one of my recommendations. I never plant without using a hoe handle, a broomstick to tamp the soil around the roots. It's important to have close soil contact to the roots. Use water and soil. We're only planting back with native soil ever, never, ever with anything else. Use the soil that you have there, and that's it. Don't put fertilizer, planting hole, those kind of things. You want to firm these in. I'm having him push his boots into the hole to pack the soil around the roots. And now I'm asking him to cut the top of the tree off. He's taken a 4-foot peach tree and cut it back to about 14 inches. And we do that with peaches for training purposes. I won't go into all that, but we recommend pruning back at the time of planting, especially with bare root plant material. But I never even plant container plant material without cutting some of the top of the plant back. I think it helps survival and recovery and flourishing, and they'll regain what they lost. And I think that's very helpful. Fertilizer, we want to see these things grow and develop. The faster we can get good size, the more likely we can survive winter and freezing temperatures and situations like that. So we typically a little bit of a race against time to get them established the first and second year. Fertilizer, particularly nitrogen, will help you do that. But we need to make sure the plant is got good root health, has established itself before we begin to apply fertilizer salts. My recommendation is don't do anything after you plant until they make new leaves and new stems. And when they make new stems, it's a pretty good indicator things are moving in the right direction. At that point, you apply either in one or multiple doses about 1/10 of a pound of actual nitrogen per plant for that year 1, and it will grow well. The following year, you can double, quadruple that, and you'll really start to see growth. If you increase nitrogen stepwise fashion in the first 4 or 5 years of the life of fruit tree, they're going to grow rapidly for you. Nitrogen is essential. I don't care what form of nitrogen you apply. Here are some examples. Nitrogen comes in a lot of forms. Everything from manure may have that in it. Compost has 1 to 2% nitrogen in it by weight. Mulches break down and deliver some nitrogen very, very slowly. Then we start to increase up to the natural materials like blood meal that has 13% nitrogen, bone meal 4%. And then we can go to the synthetics. Ammonium sulfate is 2100, common garden fertilizer, triple 13, 13, 13, 13, 10, 10, 10. Those have 10 to 13% nitrogen by weight. So I don't care what you apply, if you understand two things: how much is in the product you're delivering, so that you can know you're getting enough out and not too much out, and how slowly does it deliver the nitrogen. If it's over a period of months, like some of the natural materials, or maybe 6 to 9 months with manures and things like that, you've got to have this delivered early to get the benefit during the growing season when we need nitrogen available the most. So know how much nitrogen is in it. You can have compost tested by our soil testing lab. They'll tell you. You can have, you can buy packaged manure products. Those have been heat treated, and they will often tell you what the nitrogen percentage is in those. The other thing I'll mention to you is that weed control is very, very important at establishment. And for about 5 years in the early life of a fruit tree, not having weed and grass competition around the base of the plant will really speed its development, and you'll begin to receive the benefits of fruit crops sooner by practicing good weed control. Weeds withdraw water, nutrients, and they produce root competing hormones that will cause your trees to take additional time, maybe years, to reach their full production potential. So, how much weed-free area am I talking about? The area restricted from weed growth is important. We see a lot of people just carve out a little small area, 3 by 3. That would be 1.5 feet out from the trunk. And what research has shown is that that's not enough. That is really no different than just leaving the weeds there. But when you go to a 5 feet by 5 feet area, so imagine your fruit tree or your berry vine, berry bush being in the center of a 5 by 5 square, 2.5 feet outward is the weed controlled area, 5 feet by 5 feet for 5 years, and then 8 feet by 8 feet after that. Keep the area free of weeds year round, including the winter. We often feel good about how our plants look in the summer, the fall, and then we let things creep back in and grow and compete. And our tree roots are growing in the wintertime. And so failure to control weeds then in the winter is just as bad as is in the summer. I'll go one better. The 5 by 5 by 5, 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 years is a good rule. It's easy to remember. 5, 5, 5. I want to throw another 5. Add 5 inches of mulch on top of that weed-free area. The mulch will contribute to the weed control some. It's not good enough to control all weeds, but it will help you hold moisture, will help you hold help you maintain a cooler soil temperature, and that's going to speed up growth. So 5 feet by 5 feet, 5 inches deep mulch for 5 years, you're going to be happy with the growth and development of your fruit trees. Okay, let's talk about spraying fruit trees. A lot of people know there's stuff that goes with having a fruit tree. I'm going to have to spray these, aren't I? Is a common question. Sometimes, yes, I've mentioned some low input fruits, and I would stand by those as saying you might get away with hardly ever spraying a persimmon tree. If you weren't concerned about heart rot on pomegranates, you might not have to do much there ever. If you just wanted the plant and the fruit, and you weren't concerned about the quality of the fruit, you can get away with some of these. We have people growing pecan trees all over the state. And yeah, they don't make great pecans, but the tree's there and relatively healthy and it's never sprayed. Now there's years where they're eaten up with walnut caterpillar, eaten up with aphids, and spraying would have made the difference, but pecan trees can be difficult to spray. Young trees, berry vines may be easily sprayed with a handheld pump-up sprayer. It's larger trees and small home orchards where we run into needing a power sprayer. And we do this with battery power. We do this with tractor power, PTO powered sprayer. The lower right picture is a cab tractor with a red colored, that's a 50-gallon 3-point hitch PTO powered sprayer. That's what's called a air blast, and it uses air to move spray droplets all around the fruit and the leaves in order to get some really tricky mites and scale insects and some things that are difficult to control, that if we don't do thorough coverage, we end up having problems that we can't solve. Contact your county extension office for assistance with identification. Make sure you know what it is you've got. Don't assume. Help us help you by identification. Obtain a pesticide license if you're going to have a home orchard. It's probably a good idea for you to get a pesticide license so that you can acquire some things that are better tools, not more dangerous, better tools, and more selection by having a pesticide license can be helpful to you. Let's see. Again, I'm coming back to fruit fact sheets. And here is my contact information that I'll leave up here. I'm happy to share this presentation. I think y'all are making a recording, but I can certainly provide a hard copy to Kevin, the office there, if they want to make that available, make this available as a handout. A little ahead of schedule. It usually takes me a couple hours to get through this, but we've gotten through it. And so with that, what I'll do is open up this chat, and we'll let this be your time as far as answering some questions of something maybe we didn't get to. Maybe your fruit we didn't talk much about, something you're interested in. You have variety questions, all those kind of things, pest management questions. We've got a few minutes here to take some questions. So Sarah is asking, what are the pros and cons of growing fruit trees in pots in our area? Great question. I could easily fill up the remainder this time talking about fruit trees in pots. The challenge with pots is maintaining nutrition on a year-round basis. You do that best with slow release fertilizer. I would not dare to enter any type of serious container growing. And if we're going to have a relationship of a fruit tree in a pot, that's going to be hopefully a multi-year thing. The nutrition cannot have periods of time where it's depleted, where it's run out the bottom of the pot. And so slow release fertilizer is the answer. It is comes in a product that's rated for 8 months, 3 to 4 months, 5 to 6 months. All products differ. I'm talking about things like NutriCoat, like Osmocote, developed products that release tiny amounts of fertilizer as you water. Okay, that's very different. I'm going to go back a slide here. When I talked about sources of nitrogen, there are slow release forms of organic fertilizer. And the reason they're slow release is they take months to kind of break down, degrade, to decompose themselves and become reactive in the soil and available in an ionic form that the plant can take it up as a ammonium molecule. Okay, that's not what we want in a pot. You can have real challenges with organic materials in a pot environment. So I really think the keys to the keys to container production is in slow release synthetic fertilizer, Osmocote, NutriCoat, things that are made for container plant production. Good water is part of that. Good drainage of the soil media is part of that. And then the fourth thing would be having a place to move these plants to in the wintertime if they're going to freeze outdoors. And that's the beauty of containers is their portability, their mobility. You move them indoors for a night or two in the winter in Nueces County, and you can stick them back outside and they can be in good shape. So those are the recommendations there. Occasionally bumping the pot up to bigger size, root pruning becomes necessary. Good water, watch your water. Community water supplies will have problems. Too much of this and too much of this. Rainwater harvesting is great if you can do it, but good well water that's not too salty can be really good on that. Can Methley plum and Mexican plum cross? They can cross. You got to get them to bloom at the same time, and they're not really bred and developed to do that. You might luck into that. Um, uh, it's about coincidence of bloom appearance. They got to bloom. The blooms have to appear on both coincidentally, and that may not happen in a lot of years. Tom is asking, is Satsuma a good citrus for Corpus Christi? It's a great citrus for Corpus Christi. It's cold hardy. It matures in October, November. So you're not worried about the fruit freezing on you at Christmas time or in January. You harvest them early and maybe carry them as far as Thanksgiving, and that's it. They're low seeded. They've got a lot of benefits. So absolutely, I'm a big fan of Satsumas for the Gulf Coast of Texas. Other questions? Okay, Nicholas is asking, what's the best way to know when a fruit tree is ready to be pruned? It's ready to be pruned when it's not taking the shape that you planned for it to have. There is several different approaches to training the fruit trees. You need to read about what an open center shape is, that it's typically a tree we're going to limit to about 6.5, 7 feet maximum. We're going to have an open center. We're going to have limbs that are 60-degree angles, some scaffold branches, lots of 45-degree angle branches. And we prune throughout the growing season when we see these plants not attaining the form that we have planned for them to have. Pruning sometimes can invigorate. It may be that you have a new fruit tree that you planted and it's struggling. And pruning that back may invigorate it. So its lack of vigor could be an indicator, hey, something needs to change. Maybe it's the water, maybe it's the nutrition, and maybe reducing the amount of canopy I have in that tree will help it to stimulate some growth. Narrow angle branches, broken branches. There are a lot of reasons for pruning that may signal at just about any time of the year, and then certainly We do recommend some dormant season pruning to keep the plant young in some cases, to keep it small enough in some cases. So just depending on what it is we're trying to accomplish, uh, uh, there's several indicators that you'll become familiar with over time. Oh, Adriana's asking, how do you know when the fruit is ready to be taken off the tree? And she's asking, suggesting this is a dumb question. It's actually not a dumb question. There's color, and color can be deceiving, but color is a good indicator. What is the variety's color supposed to be at fully ripened? And so that may have not manifest. If it's colored up, if it's full size, slight softening. When I'm examining peaches, we don't like to squeeze them very hard because it can bruise them. But I'll basically wrap my fingers. Let me turn on my camera. So I will take and just reach around the center of a peach. That's not a great example, much like I would hold the center of a canned drink and just feel if that has any give when I'm exerting some pressure there, and you'll know if it's rock hard that that thing is not really right versus does it have any kind of give. That's one. The other is taste. Sometimes you sacrifice one to see where you're at. It's like pulling cookies out of the oven and checking them and eating one to see if they're too raw. We do the same thing and we'll taste them. And you got a real challenge if you got one on a fruit tree and you trying to figure out whether or not it's right. On citrus, full color, absence of green, um, complete absence of green coloration. It's typically what we wait for to get the best flavor. Um, and, um, and those will just get better over time. So it's a little bit of tasting usually to be for sure. Good questions. Anybody else?
I have to unmute because mine's too big. This is Renee Brown. I'm one of the coordinators. Kevin and I talked about this the other day with fruit trees. Like, there's been some studies done that, you know how we have a couple of days of chill hours, and then all of a sudden, because we're crazy weather down here, we'll have a couple of hot days. So there's been some studies saying, or we're, some research done. It's kind of like plus and minus. So let's say we have a peach tree that needs 350 chill hours. So let's say we've had 80, and then we get like 6 hours of heat. So it's kind of like plus, minus, plus, minus. Do you have any feelings on that theory?
No, it's absolutely a proven theory. It's how you tabulate that, and that part can be really, really challenging. Chilling is one of those things that it's like helplessness. What can you do about it if you know you're going in the wrong direction? Is there anything you can do? And we used to have some websites we could point to where you could simply plot it and chart it yourself. And you can certainly, with some data loggers, some temperature device, measuring devices, you could add it up. And there are models, and there's a Utah model, and there's things where there's portions, chill hours, chill portions, loss of chilling. It's very complex. We do a lot of just crude assessment using the old 45 model as a ballpark to help us understand the year that we're having. If we're losing 50 hours here or gaining loss, all that is happening, which it probably is in Texas, being the weird place that it is. What can we do about it? There's not much we can do about it. There are some hormones. They're very, very expensive. They take a lot of technical knowledge and examination of buds to be able to apply those, that they can satisfy some chilling. There is probably an ongoing need for us to with global warming and climate change to track this, and maybe what our counties can do is just keep up with it year after year after year, and really help us identify this change in trends and what we really receive. Sometimes certain areas of a county can have a little different chilling than others. So knowledge maybe of what people can expect to have happen and what they can plant or should plant maybe factors into that. When it's happening in real time, there's not much we can do about it, but it can help us understand the questions that are going to come about. Why did my fruit trees not make any fruit this year? And you're right, there may be some negation of chilling that happened, even though you got 400 hours that thing is supposed to satisfy its rest. There's chilling that happens too late. There's chilling that happens too early. It's a very complex subject, and we just basically knock on the door of what's going on by just watching the 45 degrees and below mid-November to about mid-February.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got 4 minutes left. There's still a time for a question or two, but I'm happy to step out 4 minutes earlier myself.
I don't see anything popping up in there, so why don't you
we've
reward yourself?
I think we've done it. And again, I'll leave my contact information up here. County people know how to get in touch with me. So, and we welcome you to think about our Texas Fruit Conference. You go to AgriLife register, and you can register for the virtual part if you don't want to go drive to lovely Fredericksburg, Texas, and you can join us virtually, and we'd love to have you. So with that, I guess I'm going to sign off, and thank you for having me. I hope it helped, and good luck on growing fruit in Nueces County.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you, sir.
welcome.